Somebody just detonated the biggest hip-hop and boxing power couple of the year, and honey, the wreckage is still smoking. Because word just dropped that Papoose has officially walked away from Claressa Shields, and the reason isn't some quiet, dignified fade-out. The reason is a set of leaked bedroom photos that hit the internet like a grenade, and once that pin got pulled, 50 Cent stepped directly into the blast radius. Remy Ma pulled up with a folder of receipts, and Claressa Shields answered back with an accusation so explosive it flipped the entire narrative upside down. This is not a breakup. This is a full-scale hip-hop civil war, and every single person in it has something to lose. So stay right here, because before we go any further into this, you already know what to do. Leave that like, get subscribed, and share this with the one friend in your group chat who has been following this mess since day one, because it is about to get so much messier, and by the end of this you are going to understand exactly why the internet cannot stop talking about Papoose, Claressa Shields, Remy Ma, and 50 Cent all at the same time. Let's rewind for a second and set the scene, because the fall makes so much more sense once you remember the rise. Papoose and Claressa Shields were paraded across timelines as this unstoppable dream pairing, the poet and the two-time Olympic gold medalist, the man with the pen and the woman with the fists, posting matching captions, showing off belts, showing off boots, showing off a love story that looked custom-built for the cameras. Everybody ate it up. Papoose stood next to Claressa Shields at every ring walk looking like a proud coach who also happened to be the boyfriend, and Claressa Shields talked about Papoose in interview after interview like she had finally found the one man who understood her world. And now, just months later, that same couple is the reason 50 Cent, Remy Ma, and half the internet pulled up a chair to watch it burn. Nothing about this fall happened quietly, and nothing about it is finished either. Here is where it actually detonates. Multiple reports now claim that Papoose has finally, truly separated from Claressa Shields, and this time the trigger was those shocking bedroom photos that started circulating everywhere online. And here's the part that makes this so much messier than a normal breakup story. This did not appear out of nowhere. Weeks before any of this surfaced, 50 Cent had already been dropping hints that he was sitting on images he could release whenever he felt like it. So when those photos finally hit timelines, it looked less like a random leak and more like a promise being kept, delivered right on schedule. Papoose had spent this entire relationship standing tall in public, playing the loyal man, the proud partner, the one defending Claressa Shields' name at every single turn. But behind that public performance, according to what's now circulating, things were reportedly far messier than the captions ever let on. And the part that seems to have actually broken Papoose wasn't just the alleged betrayal itself. It was who exposed it. Because the man widely credited with pulling the trigger on those images is 50 Cent, and once 50 Cent decides to get personally involved in your relationship, you already know the temperature is about to spike past anything either side can control. 50 Cent did not tiptoe into this one. He went fully public with cheating accusations aimed at Claressa Shields, and more importantly, he dropped a name. Maserati Bud. He came online telling Papoose to go ask his own girlfriend if she had been seeing Bud, and then he doubled down, claiming he had Ring camera footage to back it up. Ring camera footage, in this story. Let that sink in for a second. Then 50 Cent took it a step further and posted an edited photo swapping faces onto the two of them, captioned with just enough smugness to make it feel less like an accusation and more like a public execution. At first, Papoose brushed it off. He got online to defend Claressa Shields, and instead of directly denying anything, he pulled up an old clip of 50 Cent talking about Vivica Fox and tried to flip the heat back onto him. And here's the read worth sitting with. When a man's very first move in defending his partner is to go dig through somebody else's past instead of simply saying she didn't do it, that's not a denial. That's a deflection dressed up as a comeback. And the internet clocked it instantly, because Papoose has been through enough public battles by now that people know exactly what a real denial from him sounds like, and this was not it. Because when Papoose finally did address it for real, his own words ended up doing more damage than 50 Cent's accusation ever could. Papoose sat down for an interview and, when the Maserati Bud claim came up directly, he confirmed that Claressa Shields had told him she spent time with Bud, but he insisted nothing physical ever happened. Read that back slowly, because that is not a denial either. That's confirmation with a disclaimer attached. Yeah, she was with him, but they were just friends is exactly the kind of nothing happened that keeps timelines up at 3 in the morning theorizing. And there's a pattern people have started picking apart around Papoose specifically. He'll post something sharp and disrespectful about someone, and the second that person claps back, he deletes the post almost instantly. Meanwhile, according to those same observers, a wave of supportive comments and accounts swarm in defending Papoose, accusing whoever responded of clout chasing, telling them to leave well enough alone because they wouldn't be able to handle it if the real response came. Except by the time anyone checks, the original post is already gone. That's not a man standing firmly on his statement. That is a man testing the water and yanking his hand back the moment it gets hot, and honey, the internet has receipts of every single deletion. Now before we get to the part that made the whole internet gasp at once, let's pause and really sit with what Papoose was actually risking here. This is a man who has built his entire public identity around loyalty, around being the one who stayed, the one who waited, the one who defended his woman no matter what. So watching Papoose get cornered into confirming even a soft version of the Maserati Bud story wasn't just embarrassing, it cracked the entire foundation his image was standing on. And once that foundation cracked, everybody who had ever been on the other side of a Papoose subliminal post suddenly had a reason to speak up. And speaking of receipts that refused to disappear, here comes the wife. This is the moment that made the entire internet gasp at once. Remy Ma, the woman who stood by Papoose through actual prison time, the woman who built a life with Papoose long before Claressa Shields ever entered the picture, allegedly posted text messages straight to Instagram. And the caption attached to those messages from Remy Ma was pure savage energy. Remy Ma reportedly wrote that Papoose fell asleep on the phone with Claressa Shields while lying in her house, the house Papoose still refuses to leave. And then came the line that detonated everything, "Baby girl, you are not the only one." 6 words, and Remy Ma allegedly summarized the entire situation in one devastating sentence, and honey, that sentence traveled faster than almost anything else in this entire saga. Did Papoose respond with any remorse after that? According to what's being reported, absolutely not. Papoose went straight to his Instagram story and called Remy Ma a narcissist, then turned around and accused Remy Ma of cheating on him. But the internet was not letting that one slide, because this is allegedly the same man accused of stepping outside his relationship with Remy Ma to be with Claressa Shields in the first place. So watching Papoose turn around and level the exact same accusation at Remy Ma landed less like a defense and more like him tasting the very same medicine he's accused of cooking. Karma, in this story, did not just knock politely. Karma allegedly moved in and started paying rent, and Remy Ma didn't even have to say another word for people to notice the irony sitting right there in plain sight. But Claressa Shields was never going to sit there and absorb every single hit without swinging back, and when Claressa Shields finally did swing, she did not pull the punch. Once Claressa Shields felt cornered by the wave of accusations stacking against her from every direction, from 50 Cent, from Remy Ma, from strangers online piling on, she countered with something far heavier than a simple denial. Claressa Shields reportedly alleged that Papoose has a hidden attraction toward men, that Papoose has allegedly been living a double life, and that their entire relationship may have only existed for public appearances. And here's exactly where the line needs to be drawn, because this is a claim, thrown into the middle of an already nasty breakup, with zero independent proof attached to it. A mid-fight accusation from Claressa Shields is not automatically a fact just because it lands with maximum shock value. When people feel humiliated and cornered, they often reach for whatever weapon they believe will hurt the most, and that instinct does not make the weapon true. So this gets treated exactly how it should be treated, alleged, unverified, and worth watching rather than worth crowning as confirmed fact. Adding fuel to that specific fire, older claims connected to Remy Ma resurfaced around the same private family topic, another unconfirmed allegation touching a subject that deserves far more care than a breakup timeline is currently giving it. So that piece stays exactly where it belongs too, alleged, unverified, and not actually the center of this story. Because the real story here was never really about anyone's private life at all. The real story is a relationship between Papoose and Claressa Shields that had clearly been rotting from the inside for a long time and is now spilling out into public view for absolutely everyone to see. Now let's talk about the moment that genuinely got fans talking among themselves more than almost anything else in this entire saga. Once the rumors around Claressa Shields and Papoose started swirling harder, Claressa Shields sat down for an interview and said something that immediately became a headline of its own. Claressa Shields described the energy in her relationship with Papoose by saying she talks to her man like a king, that she might have the muscles and know how to fight, but she considers herself very submissive to Papoose. And the reaction online was almost immediate frustration, with plenty of people asking who exactly needed to hear all of that unprompted. Because when someone volunteers an extremely detailed explanation of how submissive they supposedly are without anyone even asking, it tends to raise more eyebrows than it settles. Instead of quietly putting the rumors out, that answer from Claressa Shields arguably poured gasoline directly onto them. Then there's the visible gap that fans kept pointing back to whenever Papoose and Claressa Shields appeared together in public. Papoose has repeatedly said he loves Claressa Shields, said it often, said it publicly, said it with his whole chest in captions and interviews. But when it comes to actual physical affection in public, observers say Papoose consistently keeps a noticeable distance from Claressa Shields. And that space between what Papoose says out loud and what Papoose actually shows in person is exactly the kind of gap where speculation grows roots and refuses to leave, and once Claressa Shields made her own allegation about Papoose's private life, suddenly every single one of those old photos of the two of them standing a little too far apart got dug back up and recirculated with a completely different caption attached. But before Claressa Shields gets crowned as the one telling the full unfiltered truth in all of this, there's an earlier chapter worth putting on the table, because patterns matter, and this one has apparently shown up before. Rewind back to a previous relationship Claressa Shields was reportedly in with a man named Tony Rich. It got serious enough that Tony Rich proposed a few years into it. Then it all fell apart. And according to accounts from that period, after that breakup ended, Claressa Shields allegedly went through the industry telling people that Tony Rich was dealing with serious personal issues, and that claim reportedly spread fast and wide. Tony Rich's family pushed back hard against that narrative, insisting it wasn't true and that it had been manufactured for attention. Their own words to describe Claressa Shields during that period were blunt: a bully, vindictive, someone who builds a person's character up publicly and then tears it down just as publicly when things end badly. So here's where this whole story lands for anyone actually paying attention to the pattern instead of just the headlines. There is a repeating shape here around Claressa Shields specifically. When relationships collapse around her, statements tend to follow that carry real potential to wreck the other person's reputation. It reportedly happened with Tony Rich. And now, watching everything unfold with Papoose, a growing number of people online believe they are watching the exact same movie play out a second time, just with different names attached and a much bigger, much louder audience watching it happen live in real time. And there's a piece of that older Tony Rich chapter that adds even more weight to the pattern, because according to accounts from people close to that situation, Claressa Shields reportedly stood in front of Tony Rich's own family at a public gathering, standing close enough that witnesses described it as intentionally uncomfortable, and members of that family later said publicly that they felt disrespected by how the moment was handled. Whether that memory is being replayed accurately or exaggerated with time is impossible to confirm from the outside, but the fact that people who lived through Claressa Shields' last public breakup are the ones now watching this new one and saying it looks familiar, that alone should tell you something about why this pattern keeps getting brought up every single time her name trends for the wrong reasons. Let's take a beat here and really break down who comes out looking like what in all of this, because that's honestly the part everybody keeps arguing about in the comments. What makes this specific saga so hard to look away from is that there is no single clean villain and no single clean victim. Papoose gets painted as the man who deflected instead of denying, who deleted his own receipts the moment things got uncomfortable, who allegedly stepped outside his relationship with Remy Ma to be with Claressa Shields and then turned around and called Remy Ma a narcissist for exposing it. Claressa Shields gets painted as the woman who allegedly reaches for the most damaging possible accusation the moment a relationship ends in her favor or against it, whichever way the wind happens to be blowing that particular week. Remy Ma gets painted as the woman who finally stopped absorbing quiet humiliation and decided to hand the internet a folder of proof instead of another vague subliminal caption. And 50 Cent, true to form, gets painted as the man who turned somebody else's private collapse into his own personal content machine, because that is simply what 50 Cent does whenever the opportunity presents itself, and honey, 50 Cent has never once passed up an opportunity like this in his entire career. Let's also talk about timing for a second, because timing tells its own story here. 50 Cent didn't just randomly decide to bring up Maserati Bud out of nowhere. According to the sequence being reported, 50 Cent had already been publicly teasing that he had something on Claressa Shields weeks before Papoose ever made his split official. Which means either 50 Cent knew this breakup was already coming and decided to speed it along, or 50 Cent's posts are actually what pushed Papoose to finally make the call. Either way, 50 Cent's fingerprints are all over the timeline of how this played out, and that alone tells you how personal this has apparently become for him, whatever the original reason for that beef even was. And here is the detail that keeps this story from fully closing even now. Every single major claim inside this saga, the cheating, the ring camera footage, the double life accusation aimed at Papoose, the family allegation dragged back up from years ago about Remy Ma, every single one of those pieces remains publicly unverified. What we do have confirmed, based on public statements, posts, and interviews from the people directly involved, is that a relationship between Papoose and Claressa Shields that was marketed as a fairy tale has completely collapsed in public, that accusations are flying in every possible direction between Papoose, Claressa Shields, Remy Ma, and 50 Cent, and that nobody involved appears to be backing down anytime soon. So where does this actually go from here? Does Papoose ever address the double life accusation directly instead of dodging it the way he dodged the Maserati Bud questions early on? Does Remy Ma have more receipts sitting in reserve that haven't surfaced yet? Because if the phone call screenshot was this damaging, imagine what else might still be sitting in that folder. Does 50 Cent escalate this further now that he's already this deeply involved, or does 50 Cent eventually get bored and move on to his next target the way he almost always does once a story stops trending? And does Claressa Shields double down on her claims about Papoose, or walk them back once the noise settles and the cameras look elsewhere? Nobody outside this situation actually knows yet, and that is exactly why this story is nowhere near finished. What we do know is that a couple once presented as unbreakable, Papoose and Claressa Shields, is now scattered across headlines, subliminal posts, leaked texts, and public accusations, with Remy Ma and 50 Cent both fully embedded in the middle of it, and every new development seems to open two new questions for every single one it manages to close. And honestly, part of what makes this saga stick to the internet the way it has is how differently each of the four major players is choosing to fight this battle. Papoose is fighting it in interviews, sitting down to explain his side point by point, which means every single sentence he says gets picked apart in real time by people looking for the next inconsistency. Claressa Shields is fighting it in soundbites, dropping one heavy quote at a time and letting the internet do the rest of the work spreading it. Remy Ma is fighting it with documentation, screenshots, and receipts that don't require any interpretation at all because the words are just sitting right there in black and white. And 50 Cent is fighting it the way 50 Cent fights literally everything, publicly, loudly, and with just enough humor mixed into the accusations that people can't decide whether to be shocked or entertained, which honestly might be exactly the reaction he's going for. For completely different fighting styles, one shared battlefield, and an audience that keeps growing every single time somebody throws another punch. Here's something worth sitting with before we wrap this up. Every person in this story is currently trying to control a narrative they can't actually control, because the moment private moments become public content, everybody loses the ability to shape how the story gets told. Papoose can't control what Remy Ma decides to post next. Claressa Shields can't control what 50 Cent decides to reveal next. And honestly, 50 Cent can't fully control how far this goes either, because once an audience this large starts treating a breakup like a live sporting event, the story takes on a life of its own regardless of what anybody involved actually wants. Drop your read on this down in the comments right now. Tell us who you think actually comes out of this looking the worst once all the dust settles, Papoose, Claressa Shields, or somebody else entirely. Tell us whether you believe the double life claim about Papoose deserves any real weight or whether it's simply a wound being used as a weapon in the middle of a messy breakup. And tell us if you think 50 Cent is finished stirring this pot, or if this is genuinely just the opening chapter of something far bigger heading our way, because knowing 50 Cent, this rarely ever stays quiet for long. If this breakdown gave you the full picture on Papoose, Claressa Shields, Remy Ma, and 50 Cent, smash that like, get subscribed so you don't miss the next update the moment new receipts drop, and share this with somebody who has absolutely been waiting for this exact tea. Because baby, this story is not over. Not even close, and the second Papoose, Claressa Shields, Remy Ma, or 50 Cent posts anything new, you already know we'll be right back here breaking it down for you.